The year was 2007 and I was a dumb little kid who loved video games. And it just so happens that MMORPGs were exploding in popularity, becoming the thing to play. You had games like RuneScape, World of Warcraft, Free Realms. Did anyone actually play that last one? All my friends were playing these games and I wanted in. Unfortunately for me, my parents were the one thing that every kid didn't want growing up. Asian. As first-generation Asians, they had a huge mistrust of practically anything, especially if it involved money. If a game I wanted to play needed an online credit card for subs, well, I couldn't play it at all. Ever. So sadly, I skipped out on playing World of Warcraft, so I never got to experience that growing up, so I turned to the other thing, which is free-to-play MMORPGs. It was like the Russian roulette of gaming. You either get lucky and find gems of games, or you just end up getting shot. You had games like Rift, Adventure Quest World, Wizard 101, Toontown, Fusion Fall, Dragon Saga, or Dragonica as I knew it. I don't know why they had two names growing up. If anyone actually remembers this, please let me know. I tried so many free-to-play MMORPGs, I think a lot of us can relate to that, but there's only one that you eventually find and stick to. And for me, that was Mabinogi, or Mabinogi. I'm probably gonna flip between both words, so bear with me here. Mabinogi is a free-to-play Korean MMO developed by DevCat and published by Nexon. So Nexon... Okay, guys, alright, guys, I know, guys, calm down. I know it's Nexon, let me talk. Released in June of 2004 in Korea, which actually places it a bit older than WoW. It would take around 4 years for the game to arrive in NA, and then finally EU. And then it was promptly cancelled in EU for lack of popularity. Yeah, so imagine having so much time invested onto a character to find out that they're killing off the whole entire server and your character, so you have to make a new one on NA. Bad luck, maybe? Yeah, shouldn't have been born European, I guess. Despite this game being around for a long time, I'm highly convinced that I am the only person in real life who's actually played this MMO. Nobody in real life has ever heard of this game for some reason, which had me thinking that everybody I met in-game were just bots. Asking if anyone's ever played this game results in them thinking I just called them a slur or something. Despite Mabinogi being around for as long as WoW, it has a sort of unheard reputation outside of Korea. In Korea, it's actually super popular and a favorite amongst a lot of K-pop idols. I'm kidding, I made that last part up, I'm sorry. But it's significantly more popular there than it is globally. For the longest time, as an on and off Mabinogi player, I always thought to myself, yeah, this game's gonna die one day. The thought mostly comes from the fact that the game is really small. And of course, for a game to survive and thrive, you need a growing community to throw it money. Just think about all the other live service games that you've ever played in your life and think about how they all were shut down. And once you're done mourning the loss of those games, just remember that Mabinogi somehow outlived all your favorite childhood games. Not only that, but it's also put on by Nexon. Nexon, a company known for killing off so many of their games. You had games like Combat Arms, Dragon's Nest, Maple Story 2, Dungeon Fighter Online. Comment if you recognize any of these games, and if you do, you might be up for a senior citizen discount as well. But somehow, Mabinogi subverts my expectations and outlives every single game out there. It manages to dodge the chopping block every single time. And honestly, I don't know how they do it. And you know what's really funny? As I was researching information on this game, I noticed that Mabinogi was not actually listed at the top of the Nexon wiki page. It's like other games up there, but no Mabinogi. It doesn't even actually show up until you hit the halfway point on the page. Based on some data from 2002, if true, the player count for Mabinogi is not as much compared to the other games, which eclipse its number by a lot. There was also even a card game made for Mabinogi called Mabinogi Duel, and actually, it was kind of fire. It had a lot of great music, the art was really cool for the cards, and it just looked really sleek and stylish, really well polished, and that game was canceled after a bit of time. Please, Nexon, if you're watching this, bring back Mabinogi Duel. It was actually kind of cool. Please bring it back. I also spent some money on the game too, so I would like for my money to not have gone down a drain entirely. So with all that said, how exactly is Mabinogi still alive? And let me quickly address this before the video continues. Don't worry, there's no sponsor segment, calm down. I used to make Mabinogi videos on YouTube. I went under a different name and I was much younger than in the smaller Mabinogi community that still is small today. So if you happen to recognize my voice, albeit a bit older than it was when I was a kid, and for those who really remember my face from all the old vlogs I used to make back in the day, welcome back. It's nice to see you again watching my videos. It's really cool seeing you once again. But let's leave all that stuff back in the old Kogan lore vault. You know, let's not dead name me in my old username because I will probably explode if you did. Okay, so let's finally get into it. What the heck is Mabinogi all about? As I said earlier, Mabinogi is an old game. It's technically 20 in Korea as of 2024, getting a bit dangerously too close to having Leo DiCaprio ever touching the game ever. It doesn't look as clean and polished as most games today, obviously, because it's running on the old engine that it's had way back when it was first conceived. Many elements of Mabby and themes are borrowed from Celtic, Welsh, and Irish mythology. Despite taking inspiration from the Welsh, it actually sports a colorful and anime style to it. It leans heavily into the anime style. In fact, it's had a lot of collabs with various animes throughout its life cycle. Did you know there was actually a ReZero collab at one point? Honestly, the aesthetics won me over. That, and they also had Now as their mascot, and she's just really pretty. Middle school me had an awakening with this one. In fact, she actually came with jiggle physics. That was unheard of to me. Like, I didn't know women actually can jiggle. That was the craziest thing that I discovered at a young age. I had to pick between Mabby and MapleStory, and I'm proud to say, as an Asian person, I have 0 hours invested into MapleStory. Apparently, it's like every Asian person's like rite of passage to play MapleStory at least 100 hours in their lifetime. Asians are apparently MapleStory vets, and they also know how to use chopsticks. I somehow fail at learning both. As I'm recording this video, by the way, there's a free run collab going on. This game is still alive somehow. Character customization is one of the biggest selling points of the game. Of course, you can choose basic features like your hairstyle, your eyes, your colors for your character, but the more unique part comes from the fact that this game has an aging system, and the aging system actually affects the height of your character as you keep playing. 1 year in-game is equal to 1 week in real life, and your character keeps aging as time goes on. But the height caps out at like age 20, so don't think that if you haven't played in forever, your character will be like a huge tree that just grows and keeps going on forever. Our playable character is not just a normal human being, but in fact something called a Militian. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know why there's so many hard words to say in this game. The Militian has a unique ability to be reborn and change their appearance at will, so it's kind of a cool tie into the game system. On top of that, you can actually change different parts of your body depending on the food you eat. You can be a large character if you eat too much food, a twig, or target specific parts of your body so you have bigger muscles in some areas like your arm. All of which are cosmetic and have no real effect on gameplay, so go crazy. On top of everything, if you're not satisfied with the game's default hair options and eyes and whatnot, you can change it all up as you keep playing the game. There are hairstyles to collect, wigs to wear, and in fact, there's also items that can change your character's default weapon stances. And some of the stances look really cool, and then you have the twin swords one, which you don't want to ever collect. Throw that away, it looks ugly, but give it to me because I still want to collect it anyways. The die system of the game is perhaps the best die system I've ever seen in a video game ever. Many different parts of equipment, whether it be weapons, clothing, tools, or even pets, are color customizable. And frankly, it puts games like Final Fantasy XIV to shame, and I love Final Fantasy XIV. And if that's not enough, we actually have 3 different races with differences in both looks and gameplay aspects. Humans are the all-arounders. They have a great balance in range and melee combat. The shorter elves excel in range combat, including both range and magic, but the trade-off is that they actually suck when it comes to melee combat compared to the other 2 races. And finally, the giants are the complete opposite. They are absolute menaces when they get up close and personal in combat, but they actually suck at magic because they're big dum-dums. Also, their hands are too big and they cannot handle the fragile range weapons like bows, so they have to use something called an addle-addle. What the hell's an addle-addle? I think that's a made-up word. Okay, so enough about the looks, Co. Let's talk about the gameplay. Alright, sit down. Let me tell you about the gameplay. After you're done making your character and meeting the lovely Now, you can finally get into the game. And the combat of Mabinogi is what I like to call dynamic. In most MMOs, you have that classic standstill, auto attack, and then you have some skills you can throw in every now and then with a sort of turn-based style gameplay with the occasional dodge the scary orange color because you're orange phobic. But with Mabby, you can actually kite most enemies if you have the speed and range to outrange them. You can also throw insane combos because most skills have independent cooldown timers from one another. If you play your cards right, you effectively can go into battles without ever being touched by your enemies. And personally, I love that freedom of expression. Okay, that sounds cool and all, Co, but what can we use for weapons? Well, sit down because I'm about to tell you right now, we have so many options. There are a variety of weapons to use. We have swords, we have axes, we have blunts. not that one. And then you also got the two-handed versions of each one. Magic, we have staves and wands. Archery, we have bows, crossbows, but if you're a giant, you can't use that because your hands are too big. You have to use an addle. What the hell's an addle? Ninjas can use shurikens, and yes, we do have ninjas in the game. Cylinders are used for alchemy, which has no relation to Full Metal Alchemist, which, by the way, we also had a collab for. You can even use a fishing rod in battle, which isn't that viable, but you can actually use a guitar and instruments in battle, which actually is viable. And you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, if we have so much choices, then what the heck? What are the classes in the game? Well, that's the crazy part about this whole entire game. This game has no classes. You can literally play and use whatever items you want, as long as you're not a giant trying to use bows, and play in practically any style you want in Mabinogi. You want to only use melee? Go for it, but then you miss out on having range, so why not add a bow to spice things up? Some Aragorn type shit. Don't like using shields? Throw the shield away. You can dual wield and pretend you're Kirito in Mabinogi. Also, by the way, there was also a SAO collab at one point. Use magic with your melee weapon, so now you become a spell sword, Gandalf type shit. If you want to use guns, we also have that in Mabinogi, Hawkeye type shit. You can hold two different styles of weapons at the same time through your main and sub handsets. But if you're insane, you can actually swap out weapons from your inventory to your weapon slot, so that way you can actually use different skills at once. It sounds sort of impractical, but this is actually something that people do. They'll swap to like an instrument for bard skills to like buff up their team and themselves, then swap back to other weapons mid-battle. All of this plays into the talent system of the game, which is the closest thing we'll get to having classes. Instead of restricting your playstyle, the talent system actually helps you with raising your character. Some of the bonuses include things such as speeding up the training for a skill that falls underneath your chosen talent. So let's say you chose the archery talent. Well, then anything that is archery related, such as bows, crossbows, their training will be increased. You'll receive additional specific stats gained from leveling that corresponds to your talents. So if you pick the close combat talent, then expect to gain more strength from leveling than you would say intelligence. Despite having to pick a talent, you're never really stuck with having to use said talent. It's also worth noting that it's not a permanent choice, so don't worry about having to pick one and you're stuck with that forever. But besides helping your character grow, you can use any weapon at your disposal with no repercussions for the most part. I would say this whole system actually adds to your character rather than take away anything, so you can still use every weapon at your disposal if you're able to do so without any, restrictions on your race and whatnot. Of course, it may not be optimal gameplay if you chose to be a mage, but then end up just using skills from the melee tree only, but at the end of the day, you choose how you play, and as long as you have fun, that's what really matters. I'm not that big of a fan of games that lock you into using one weapon for a class, or God forbid having gender lock classes. Back in my day, a lot of games had this, and that was a huge turnoff for me. Vindictus. But I will always love Mabinogi for this. The freedom of expression when it comes to how you play is absolutely huge for me. Now, in recent years, they actually added a new type of talent to the game called Arcana talents. These are kind of like hybrid talents, and they absolutely change how the game is played. The damage output from these are insane, and it's almost mandatory to start using these if you want to put a dent into the enemy's HP. And the skills they come with are kind of game-changing. And some examples I have here are the Elemental Knights, who can imbue their melee skills with magic, and Harmonic Saints, who are the ultimate support role combining both cleric and bard skills together. Speaking of bards, we also had a Hatsune Miku collab. Arcanas are the recently added new feature to the game, which feels really weird to say that this game is still alive. They are still so fresh to the game and still popular that they're adding some more to come, and including a one that has a scythe, which I really want to use because I love scythes so much. But that begs the question, how does Mabby stay alive? How does it make money? One of the biggest features of the game are pets. You got the cute, adorable little pets to the cool, badass, edgy design looking ones. They can be helpful for getting around the game as they are faster than the playable characters, and they also can help with combat in many different ways. Some have a special summoning attack that helps save you from a group of enemies jumping you. Some of these attacks can knock back your enemies or even freeze them. There's also a command feature in the game with the chat system, so let's say you do sit with the exclamation mark included, most pets will sit down actually on command. It's a bit corny, but I still like it. I think it's a really unique feature. Many pets come with unique abilities that may help you with combat or may help you with the life skills such as tailoring or blacksmithing. And as a bonus, you can actually log into your pets and play as them. You could walk around the world and travel if you wanted to. Unless you're into role-playing, I wouldn't really recommend doing this because you can't do as much as a playable character could. A downside to having a pet is that you can only summon them for a limited time each day, some having on average 90 minutes per day to be summoned. You don't have to worry too much about running a pet's timer up too much because it comes back the next day, and for the most part, people summon a pet quickly and then just put them away right after. You can actually increase a pet summoning timer, but I'm not going to go into that for this video because that's a whole deep dive, and this is just an overview of the game as a whole. But just know that you can do that if you really want to play Mabinogi and be a part of the 12-player fan base that's still here in NA. Oh, and also, big thing, pets have an inventory space. Some of them have a huge space, and some of them have small spaces, but great for holding things. Excellent. They can be like a mini bank on the go. Sadly, a majority of pets are mostly bought with NX, which is like Nexon's premium currency. But if you started a new account today, you're able to get at least 5 free pets within the first few hours of playing. These pets are a bit basic. They have inventory space. You can mount some of them. They're really nice for new players to get around, but eventually you kind of want a horde of them to help you get around the game more efficiently. But besides that, most pets are obtained with money, either in-game where you buy the pets from other players for millions of gold, which is a lot of money, or sometimes through events, which you have to grind for, but you don't have to pay money, so it's kind of like the trade-off there. And because of the landscape of gaming today, we also have something called Pet Gacha. This is where you roll for the hotly desired pets, but sometimes you're able to get other pets along the way, so it's not a complete waste, but it's gacha at the end of the day, so it's a lot of money being spent. Now, for the main way that Mabi makes its money though, gachapon, or gacha. Mabi was utilizing gacha way before all these games started doing it when it got popular. It was like the hipster back in the day. Yeah, so it wasn't Genshin or Fire Emblem Heroes, it was actually Mabinogi. It was my first gambling exposure. Mabi will throw out gacha, and I mean it. Like, they throw out so much gacha like every month, it's ridiculous. Their gacha features a lot of hot fashion items with outfits with unique animations and poses to them, and that is probably their biggest draw. Players will try and gamble their money to get the hottest fashion items in the game just so they can stand in the most populated town and look good. And when I mean by populated town in the game, I mean like, 20 people in the whole game server just standing there doing nothing. And that's all they want to do, just to look good the whole time. People in most games would joke about how fashion is the end game. Mabinogi is that's the whole end game, like legit, that is what it is. And to make things even worse, it's so evil that Mabi actually features items that look like the hot ticketed items with the cool unique poses and animations that have nothing but the look to it. So you'll have the cool pose animation one, and then you'll have the knockoff Temu version one. And everyone can tell, like, if they see you, you'll be made fun of, and it sucks. It's happened to me, like, every time I play the game. And for the most part, if I'm not wrong, almost all gacha items are tradable, so if you didn't get it with your real-life money, you can still pay other players millions of gold to get it. Or if you happen to get it, you can actually sell it for millions of gold as well, so it's a pretty good money maker. But of course, we have to stuff other things in there and bloat the gacha, so we have things such as weapon effects, appearance scrolls that act as transmog for your weapons, and also crappy other things that you don't need at all. But to get some of these high-price, rare gacha items, the rate is about 0.13%, which, once you move the decimal place over a bit, that is the real percentage chance you'll get it. And it absolutely sucks. It's a very pricey and luck-based game, so if you're still playing Mabinogi for the gacha, good luck to you. I'm glad I'm out. I spent way too much money on it. And that's the crazy part about this game. The gacha is that strong. It's that strong that it enthralls so many people to stay in the game, spend money, and keep this little evil devil of a game running for many years. People throwing out hundreds of dollars just to look good in a town square. Endgame is truly fashion, and with Mabi, it's truly insane. Gacha is viewed as a great evil. Why have players pay for a one-time fee when we can just have them pay continuously for random things they don't need until they get the thing they need? It's a not-so-favorite thing amongst many players around the world for different games, but it's sadly now viewed as a norm, so we just have to deal with it. And for me, Mabi was the gateway drug that got me into playing a lot of gacha games later, and I am a bit better now, but gacha is still gacha, Mabi is a free-to-play game, so you don't have to spend any money, but of course, you might want to spend a little bit to help you get a bit of an edge and enjoy the game a bit more. So I decided to play Mabinogi on a brand new account, not a new character, but through the lens of somebody who wants to try Mabinogi in the year 2020, well, technically I recorded in 2024, but 2025, so that I may get the new player experience, and let me tell you about how it went down for me as a new player in the first few hours. They made the game a lot faster. You level up so fast that you practically skip all of the early game now. You can effortlessly solo much of the early game content with no problem at all. And if I can put on my old man hat and say, you know, back in my day, when I was a new player back then, you would spend hundreds of hours getting past the early game to get to mid game and then eventually late game. But then, you know, most people quit by then, so you don't actually get that far. But you would spend so many hours trying to get your character strong enough to be decent at fighting, but now it's all skipped in a flash. One of the biggest systems of Mabi is the rebirthing system. The max level in Mabi is 200, and while that sounds insanely high, the truth is most players are not expected to be at that level. And this is where the rebirth system comes into play. The rebirth system allows you to essentially restart your character's level to 1, making you weak with the level 1 stats again, but trust me, it sounds crazy, but you need to do this. Whenever you level up, you typically get an increase to your stats that only lasts until you rebirth again, but more importantly, you get 1 ability point or AP. How you get stronger in Mabi is by grinding out levels to acquire a lot of AP, and then using said AP to rank up your skills that gives you permanent stat increases for your character. Also, when you rebirth, you're able to change your character's looks and their talents, so it has a lot of features to it. Now let me explain how skills work. Skills get stronger as you rank them up, starting from the novice rank to rank F, then backwards in the alphabet to rank A, and once you hit rank A, it then goes to rank 9, which descends to the highest rank for most skills, which is rank 1. And then there are also advanced levels for certain skills that go from rank 1 to Dan 1, and then from Dan 1 to Dan 3, which is the final highest max you can get for most skills, unless I'm missing something there. To rank up skills, you have to do various tasks in order to complete your training to advance said skill. In the past, the training you had to do was extremely time consuming. Some combat skills start off easy, you know, you kill anything, and eventually as you keep going higher in rank, they want you to kill tougher enemies that are much more powerful than you. How tough an enemy is in relation to your character is based on your combat power, which had the unfortunate abbreviation that I will not utter for this video, but back then we didn't think twice of it back then. Now in the year 2025, for training skills, all you have to do is simply use it. That's it. You simply just kill things and just work on your character just like that. No more having to hunt down tough enemies or intentionally making your character weaker with items so that way you can make training faster. You just simply kill whatever with a combat skill. That's it. Now, I'm not gonna argue whether this is a good thing or a bad thing because I can see the benefits on both sides. With today's system, you can actually breeze through training and get the higher skills and do a lot of damage faster than you would back in the day. But back then, there was a sense of accomplishment when you actually got a skill to rank 1. And with some skills, it was not easy to reach rank 1. It was a lot of time put into it, and some things involved a bit of the tedious task to do. Knowing those who had a high rank skill, you tend to have a lot of respect for because they are really strong and they put the time into it. As you rank skills, you gain permanent stat increases versus leveling up where it only stays until you rebirth. So for example, if you rank your combat mastery skill, you actually net some points for your strength and dexterity. Strength goes well with melee damage, and dexterity goes well with range damage, of course. Magic skills will award you with intelligence, which goes well with, you guessed it, magic skills. You might end up even doing some non-combat skills or life skills to get stat increases from them. So for example, carpentry is a great source of strength, but you have to do carpentry, which is not fun. Still kind of sucks in the year 2025. It's not good. But to sum it all up, AP is the true king, and rebirthing is vital to gain more AP as fast as possible. Because once you've ranked up all the skills, or almost all of them, you become so powerful. Enough to take on the mid-game. I'll talk more about this later, but for now, just know that rebirthing is very important, and also, it's only important enough to get you to the mid-game. You have to do a bit more to get stronger. In the beginning of Mabi, you're given the option of doing a side quest known as Memoir. You'll meet a young girl named Blanid, which I hope I'm saying that right, please make easier to say names, who gives you a rundown on how to play Mabi. It's like the new tutorial of the game, and if you don't do this, you're basically an idiot. This questline will grant you so many bonuses, ranging from the massive AP gains just by playing it, so you can completely skip out on all the grinding and just get like 5,000 AP up front. That's like 5,000 levels right there and done. To some items that are really strong that helps you get your footing on Mabi compared to the back in the day where we had nothing but really crappy blacksmith shop weapons that had no other bonuses on them. By the time you're done with the blended questline, you should be around level 5,000 at least, which is about 5,000 AP. That's enough to help you get a whole entire talent subset of skills finished out and ranked out all the way. And the training for some of these skills are already done. All you have to do is just walk up, rank it up, and you're done. It cuts out so much of the early game boring grind that you pretty much skip right to the almost mid-game section. And for the heck of it, they even give you some money. You get 600k to start off your account, so you have some starting money to play with when you finish the tutorial of the game, which back in the day, 600k was a lot to me. To say the blended questline accelerates your progression in the early game is an understatement. It completely throws it out the window. But I get it, just like the skill training changes, I can get why they made these changes to make the game more easier and appealing for the new players to come. Newer players may just want to get to the spicier parts of the game ASAP and play with their friends who are already ahead of them. So no more need for that initial 100-hour investment, you just jump right in and you're able to kind of hold your ground for the most part in certain fights. I will say I can't help but feel that losing that early game grind is sort of a lost experience now. Meeting new players was one of the best parts about playing an MMO, having to go around and play with people who can help you, teach you how to do things, help carry you through levels because you suck at playing the game in the early game, let's be honest here. That was all experiences that I had as a kid, and it really helped me kind of grow as a person. I know how to interact with people. I was having a lot of fun meeting people, and some people I met in the early game of Mabby, I still kind of talk to today. We're Steam friends. It's crazy. Back when Mabby wasn't even on Steam. I think it's on Steam, right? Yeah, it is on Steam. Now, of course, you can't opt to not use the blended questline in the system, and that way you can kind of play the game in the old classic Mabinogi way, but you're kind of dumb if you don't do this. If you're a new player, just do it. In the past, you were just plop into the world of Mabby and you can kind of do whatever you want. It was really reminiscent of RuneScape, honestly. You can either do the main quest and stories or just go straight into making your own adventures and go, I don't know, make money by doing the commerce system, which is really fun, actually. I actually enjoy doing that a lot. I will say the blended questline gives you a bit of direction, and it's honestly a nice quality of life change for all the newer players to come. So much of the game has received so much quality of life upgrades that I'm not even upset about. In the past, one of the ways to fast travel is to use moon gates. Moon gates must be first registered by clicking on it when it opens, so you have to be at a certain place. You just can't teleport wherever you want initially. And just like its name states, it only opens until nighttime because, well, you know, moon gate, well, big surprise. So going around and collecting each of the moon gates for teleporting was a bit of a pain in the ass, but it was kind of an adventure. You kind of go around the game and explore. This received a quality of life upgrade in the mid-2010s where you're able to use the moon gates at any time of the day. It just opens up. It never closes now. Next to that, we also have something called the Traveler's Guide that you can use to click, teleport wherever you want to go, and you're there instantly. You don't even have to visit the location. I think you can just pretty much click and go wherever you want, so long as you have gold if you're not using the VIP system. The adventure portion of Mabby is kind of gone for the early game now. Because of how strong you get from doing the blended questline, you can blaze through pretty much everything in the early game. In a weird way, I really do miss that slow burn progression when you're a brand new player back in the past. As I said earlier, when you reach rank 1 with a certain skill, it's one of the best feelings ever because you get a cool title to show off that the fact that you mastered a skill when you had enough training done for it. Equipping that title and showing it off to your friends was quite the accomplishment, honestly. You had titles like Master of Close Combat, Master of Magic, and even Master of Hoeing. That is a real title in the game. Yes, hoeing is an actual skill in the game, not just the act of going from one player relationship to another, but we'll get into that in another story video one day. This might be a bit lengthy, but bear with me please. Here's an example of something that has been turbo accelerated in modern day Mabby. Ice Spear is an advanced level magic spell that is quite nutty to use. You cast the spell to summon a sick looking ice spear and send it flying to impale all your enemies in its path. Well, not actually impaling, you know, of course, this is Mabinogi. It wasn't actually a graphical phenomenon back in the day. All the frozen enemies then explode after a few seconds, doing splash damage and massive damage to everyone around them. Ice Spear was one of the more powerful spells that one can acquire from back in the day. So, how does one get this powerful spell, you may ask? You have to talk to Stewart, who was this dumb-looking nerdy guy in Dumbarton School. Dumbarton was also like the central area of the game, by the way, where like most players would congregate in AFK and show off. After you talk to him, he gives you this book called the Exploration Journal. Your goal is to collect 5 pages to complete the book. But there's a catch. You have to acquire these pages as drops from dungeons and enemies found throughout the game, and it's 2 continents. In the past, there was like 2 big continents of Mabby. Now there's like 20 or something. I gave up keeping track. You either get these pages from fighting or by buying them off other players at their kiosk. Either way, once you get all the pages, you deliver the book to Stewart, who then points you to this homeless musician guy in another city named Nelly. Nelly? Nelly? One of those two. Now, for some odd reason, I didn't actually read the quest back then, but Nell has the actual Ice Spear book. which you now have to collect more pages for. So you have to journey across Mabby again, across the whole entire game, collecting all these pages, or buy them because, you know, drop rates suck, of course. And once you have all 5 pages of Ice Spear done, you can put it into the book, and now you're done. You can finally acquire Ice Spear. You read that stupid sucker, you get that skill, and after that, you proceed to get steamrolled by all the enemies around you because you lack the intelligence skill to actually deal damage, and you're still a glass cannon in the game because you suck. And that was how you get some of the more advanced skills in the game. You had to go hunt for these pages and then put into a book and read the book. Makes sense, right? But once you finish the quest line and get that skill, it makes it feel more rewarding. I really did like that vibe. It did take a bit of time, but it actually felt like a real quest that you finished and accomplished. Now, how do we get this skill in Mabinogi in 2025? Well, this is what you gotta do. Do the main story quests. That's it. You just do these quests, and once you have completed it, it just gives you the skill. And once again, I get it. I understand why they made these changes. Nowadays, players just want to get a thing and move on. They don't want to have to grind for stuff for the most part. But it does cut out all the adventuring and the grind that I had to do back in the day. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, I had it harder. Everyone should be, you know, going through what I went through. I think it's just more of, I missed that adventure, having to go around with friends and then having to find, you know, new friends along the way and acquire these skills and whatnot. But trust me, I completely get it. I don't want to go through the grind again. It was a one-time deal in my life, and I don't want to go back. I do feel a bit bad for the newer players of Mabby, the 10 of you guys who came out in the last 12 years to try this game out. On my journey to getting Ice Spear, I was complete shit at the game. But by the end, when I finally acquired Ice Spear, I was still shit at the game, but I actually met other players who helped me get the things I needed to get the spell unlocked. I just mourned the loss of having a big adventure, and you know, it is what it is today, and we just can't do anything about it now except just reminisce about the times we had before. Something else that I remember that wasn't as tedious as trying to get Ice Spear was unlocking Final Hit, a really great dual-wielding human skill, where you teleport around and start smacking enemies relentlessly like you were in actually SAO. To get this skill, you had to go around and sketch different statues across Mabinogi, and one of them only appeared when there was a thunderstorm, so it was a bit tedious to wait for the stars to align and, you know, the thunderstorm to occur, but when you finally got it, it felt so good to finally acquire the skill that was one of the most powerful skills to have. Nowadays, same thing as Ice Spear. You pretty much just play through the game and you'll unlock the skill by doing the main story quest. Now, as far as I know, you can still do these old methods to get these skills, but why do that when everybody else around you is going to do the new stuff? So that way, you know, you're just saving a lot of time. Why just waste your time doing all that? And while we're here, let me do a quick breakdown on how the main story quests work in Mabby. The big major patches of Mabby that add a ton of new content are called generations. These come with new main story quests, and we refer to them by the generation added. So for example, generation 1 being the very first, we call it G1. G1 was Advent of the Goddess, which set you on a quest to free said goddess from the imprisonment of a dark evil god. G2 was about the dark plot of a church and you stopping them. This is where you fight dark with light by gaining the new paladin transformation skill. But if you're playing the other races, you get different skills. So if you're playing elf, you become a falcon, and if you're playing giant, you get savage beast. G3 serves as an ending to the first 3 trilogy. Here you stop the same evil god from generation 1 from plunging your world into darkness. And as you can tell, darkness is an ever-occurring theme in the whole entire story of Mabby. Beating G3 unlocks the Dark Knight transformation for humans. You can't be both a paladin and a Dark Knight, so choose wisely. After that, you skip to Generation 7. Yep, there's nothing for 4, 5, and 6, so moving on. And as far as I know, there's no mandatory story for Generation 7, it just serves as an introduction to the new continent that was released at the time, Iria. G8 is about dragons, G9 through 12 about alchemy and gods, and in G13, we get Shakespeare. I'm not even joking, he actually appears in the story, and to top it all off, he's just like our playable character, a Militian. He doesn't die, he's immortal, rebirths, all of the works. G13 was about Hamlet, G14 was Romeo and Juliet, G15 was Merchant of Venice or Venice, G16 was about Macbeth, and then it ends there. G17 and 18 are the return of the old characters from generations 1 through 3 now grown up with their own agenda to stop gods from interfering with their mortal lives, which I understand because gods are kind of crazy, as you can tell. And after that, I'm gonna be real, I stopped paying attention to the game's plot because I stopped playing around that time. As far as I know, the game has gone past or is at generation 25 and is still well alive, which is insane to me to keep thinking about. To Mabby's credit, the story, as far as I can remember, weren't groundbreaking masterpieces that will change the game of storytelling forever, but they were pretty good. They weren't bad. When I wasn't skipping to avoid disconnecting during a final dungeon or bosses, because if you disconnect during any of the portions, you have to restart, and going through 5 floors of a tough dungeon was not fun. The stories were fun to watch and were pretty dark. It almost feels like every single generation ends with a Pyrrhic victory. You win, but along the way, a lot of people died and things will never be the same. But for the most part, going back and kind of like reading it up a bit, it was actually pretty entertaining to read. So if you've played the game before, maybe go back and read it again and you might get a good kick out of it. One of my biggest goals in Mabby was to try to get all my skills to rank 1, because once you do so, you'll become stronger from all the stat gains, right? I thought by ranking all the skills to rank 1, I'll be strong enough to do anything in the game, and I was sorely mistaken. Sadly, ranking all your skills is not entirely the case of becoming strong. You have to do a bit more, and to do so, to get big high damages, you had to invest in your equipment. And sadly for me, trying to hunt for the best equipment in the game was a lot of time investment, and I did not want to play that game, and that stopped me from playing Mabby as a whole. Let me tell you guys about how equipment gathering and getting better and stronger works in Mabby. First off, you need to acquire a weapon or equipment, whether it be from an NPC store, or you get it as a drop from monsters, or perhaps a player crafts it. To which the last one, a player crafting your equipment, will generally be the best option possible, because the stats that they gain from a high-ranked blacksmith player will probably be better than whatever you get from a store. And once you have your weapon, you just need to upgrade it, and then go a bit further than that. Almost all equipment in the game can have 2 enchants at once, a prefix and a suffix. And it's simple, just pretty much find the best enchant for your set, whether it be more damage or more stat increases, just get that and you're done. One particular thing that a lot of people look out for is something called max damage. The higher max damage you have, the more damage you do. Enchanting is probably the least frustrating thing. You simply have to find the enchant you need, either from buying from other players or as a drop, and then once you acquire that, you have to make sure your enchant level can put the enchant on, and if you can't do that, you can ask another player to do it for you. But you also have to pray that when you put the enchant on, it'll succeed, because it can fail, and if it fails, you lose it forever. So pray hard. Okay, so Reforges, I actually tried to record myself explaining it and I was getting confused myself, so I'm gonna try to sum it up and just read from my script without trying to get too extra. So this is how they work. Reforges give basic passive effects, referred to as lines. The passive effects can range from increased damage output for a skill, or cooldown reduction for skills, and etc. Equipment can have up to 3 Reforged passive lines. Once you use a Reforge, it has a chance to increase the amount of lines or even increase the equipment Reforged level. The higher the Reforged level of an equipment, which ranges from 1 to 3, the chances to receive more powerful effects increases. Reforges can be acquired in-game, but they're very limited and they suck compared to the web store versions. The web store version will cost real-life money, but will have a higher chance at getting better Reforged lines. Now, this all sounds simple enough, but here's why Reforges suck. It's all RNG. To level an equipment Reforge level, it's completely RNG. You have to use a Reforge and pray it just randomly levels it up. To increase the amount of line a Reforge has on an equipment, you have to use Reforges and basically roll until you get lucky and get more lines. To get the best possible Reforge combination, it's completely all RNG. And for the most part, I don't think you can save like one line and then reroll the others. It's pretty much you have to reroll everything. It's all or nothing. As far as I know, that's how Reforging works, as if I can remember, but it's very expensive, it's all RNG, and it's tough. Now, there are some free options, as I said earlier, but once again, not as good as the web store versions. Now, once again, you can acquire everything technically for free if you play the game, grind gold, and buy off other players, but expect to pay a lot of money for said equipment. And finally, for the mother of all headaches of weapon upgrading, before I get there, let me go over the steps to get there. When it comes to upgrading weapons in the game, you can start off very basic by getting upgrades from a blacksmith. When it comes to choosing the right upgrade path, you should look at another player's build or perhaps the wiki for a good insight on what to choose, because whatever you choose for an upgrade is permanent. So this is really easy. All you have to do is sit down and use a weapon to increase its proficiency. Proficiency is then used to upgrade the weapon. And then once you're done applying all the upgrades, which is typically about 5 to 6, you can then apply the final upgrade, the gem upgrade, which all you have to do is find a specific gem size and then apply to your weapon and you get a bit more bonuses. Now, once you have a fully upgraded weapon with a gem upgrade, we have to do special upgrades. By using a red or a blue upgrade stone, you can increase a weapon's power even further. The red upgrade stone focuses on a weapon's critical damage, while the blue one is focused on overall damage by, max and min. There are multiple steps to upgrading with the special upgrade. At step 1, when you upgrade, it has a 100% chance to succeed. So easy, GG, whatever, move on. Now, however, at step 2 and 3, there is a 50% chance to succeed. Also, when you do upgrade, it does require money, so it requires about like 30k gold every time you do an upgrade. While it doesn't sound too bad, every time you fail a special upgrade, it'll decrease the level. So if you're trying to go from 2 to 3 and you fail, you go back to 1 and you gotta restart. So have fun, and it gets worse from here. Upgrading from steps 4 to 6 has a 40% chance to succeed, while also requiring 50k gold this time per attempt. And finally, at the last stage, stage 7, you have a 30% chance to succeed, but every attempt is about 500k gold, and that's a lot of gold. And to make things even more annoying, at step 7, if you happen to fail that step, there's a chance for you to be locked out of upgrading entirely. So that weapon you're trying to attempt will not go further than 6 and you're screwed. So I lied, so this can actually occur from steps 5 to 6 even. Now you can revert this lockout by trying to use a item in the game, but apparently this is a headache to get and I'm not gonna bother talking about it here, but it is a very costly and a very time-consuming and annoying process. Now, let's talk about spirit weapons real quick. Spirit weapons are not as annoying. All you have to do is pretty much put a spirit onto your weapon, and they will talk to you occasionally. You make them happy by talking to them. You can feed them some gems, and other than that, make them happy. They'll get stronger. That's all you gotta know. And finally, the worst one out of all the upgrades is something called Erg. And to summarize it all up, basically, Erg is a weapon upgrade that gives a weapon a level between 1 and 50 for the Erg level. The higher the level, the more powerful. But to upgrade, you need a lot of resources. At certain levels called breakthroughs, to succeed in leveling the equipment, it has to go through a success rate which is lower as you keep going. The final level is about 0.3%. And at that point, you've used a lot of materials and you will pretty much be tearing your hair out trying to get to this last level because it sucks. Just know that it's very painful and it's not fun. Okay, so we do all of this for what, Co? Why do we want to do all this weapon upgrading to be strong? What is the end game like? We do this all for end game content. Yeah, exciting. To get end game material. Woo! To make end game weapons. To do more damage. With enough damage now, you can spam endgame content with your friends to try to get those rare drops to sell or to make yourself stronger 3 times a week. For the most part, the endgame content I heard is limited. You can't spam it as much as you want. You can only do it a certain amount of times each week. Apparently, you can surpass this limit by using an item, but that's something else I'm not gonna get into. Yeah, but pretty much you do all of this so you can see damage go up and it makes people happy. Like all MMOs, Mabi is an absolute grind and is made worse with its drop rates being pretty much abysmal. And the cycle keeps going, so once you hit that end game, you pretty much spam it until you don't feel like it. Wait until the next big update where they introduce even harder things and go on and on and on. With all the endgame talk out of the way, let's talk about something that cannot be avoided, and that is the big Mabinogi Eternity update. Mabinogi Eternity is basically a project that'll overhaul the game from its old engine to the new sexy and cool Unreal Engine. For the most part, it'll graphically enhance the game. Gameplay-wise, I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see as time keeps, revealing information as we keep going. But for the most part, it's a long-term project that won't drop for a good while, but once it comes out, a lot of people suspect that this will launch Mabi back into popularity. And we will finally be in the golden era of Mabi, where it will be a top-tier MMO game that'll launch itself to be competing next to 14 or WoW or RuneScape. Whether this will be true or not, time will tell. Personally, for me, I find all the current systems of Mabi to be extremely exhausting. All the upgrading to be strong is just a lot of time investment and money that I don't want to put into. And I come from playing old school RuneScape recently, so I know what grind is like, and that is something I don't want to do in Mabi. And if these upgrading systems are still within the game later on when its Eternity system comes out, I find myself comfortably sitting at the mid-game level not doing end-game content. I'll be that guy who logs in occasionally to see how the game is doing, but for the most part, if there's nothing really enticing enough, I'm gonna leave the game and come back as a on and off player. I really do hope that the Eternity update is more than just a facelift, because if that's all it is, I don't think I see Mabinogi growing any more than it is now. I will say I'll remain cautiously optimistic, so I'm not gonna say bad update, game dead. We're gonna wait and see. And while I did mention how annoying it is to get equipment for the endgame content, I will say that Mabi is still a pretty fun game when you're not having to do that. You're not required to get to the endgame and do all that content. You can take it easy and invest in life skills, so that way you can just sit down and gather some potatoes and sell to players and become a blacksmith and make gear. That's just kind of one of the best parts about the game. You can kind of just choose to live in this weird fantasy style life and just have fun with it. For people who are into music, you can actually create music scrolls so that way you can play certain songs from other games and whatnot. You can compose your own music, and I think that's really neat. When I'm not reminded of how annoying the endgame progression is and how annoying it is to get the best equipment, I'm also reminded that the game is also what you make it. I am much older than I am when I first started playing the game, and I prefer to just really have my character sit down and AFK fish. I find that really enjoyable for the most part. I haven't reached the endgame levels of Mabby, but I'm really satisfied with just being a casual player. And I like to think that there are other players out there who share the same sentiment as me, where we like to jump into Mabby to get away from the real world and come into this world of Mabby where we can have this freedom to do whatever we want and live in a fantasy world. If you're not down to grind for endgame content, you can always hang out in the game, explore the many areas of the game, because this game has so many areas that are just forgotten, that needs to be checked out every now and then. Or do the main story quests, because the main story quests are not that bad in terms of story. There's also some raids in the open world of the game where some big alligators will spawn up, or lions, and getting people together to kill them can be really fun. MMOs are usually a fun space to explore, and to me, I think that's my favorite part about Mabby, just doing unusual grinds to get the lava cat robe that looks really cute. I like doing stuff like that now. Back in the day, it was all about trying to get the cool spells and do a lot of damage, but now I find myself logging in and just enjoying the time that I have just by fishing or sitting in the town square. Mabby is a vastly different game than it was when I first played almost 10 plus years ago. Mabby has traded off the long burn journey for the sake of convenience, and I can see the arguments on both sides and what makes them both so great. And I'll just sit back and enjoy both while reminiscing the old great times of when I was having a lot of fun as a kid exploring the big world of Mabby. The social aspect of Mabby is also interesting. The crowd who plays this game are your typical anime-loving fans, so if you're into that thing, you'll fit in just nicely. And by the way, did you know we had a Fate Stay Night collab? We had a lot of collabs in this game, I know. If you ever decide to play Mabinogi, I highly recommend that you join a guild, because players can be very helpful and they can give you a leg up. And also, they're probably really bored, so they don't mind helping you out. You might meet some new lifelong friends, or catch up with some older friends if you're a returner, or you might find the love of your life playing Mabinogi. Congratulations to these two. How much time Mabinogi has left in its life, I frankly have no idea. This game survived so much over the years, and if you're an old player like me, you'll find yourself possibly logging on and fighting old friends who may be around still. I've had it happen a few times in my life, and honestly, it's a nice moment of reconnecting. As I make this video thinking about the past and present of Mabby, it really has me thinking how fast time can move and things can change drastically. So until its possible end of service, or maybe Mabby outlives even me and continues on going forever and ever, the best thing you can do in life is to enjoy what you have now before whatever crazy changes tomorrow brings. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Light Dark. Oh! Kogan! And I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. Have a good one.